Cgiben Studios, in association with the Warner Railway Adventures of Tom's the Tank Engine Production, are both proud to present Golden Opportunity. Life on the island of Sodor had unfortunately never been worse. A lot of bad things have been happening on the island lately. Engines had gone missing, some engines were gone for good, and there have been a lot of accidents as well. And one of the accidents had put Sir Topham Hatt in the hospital. Richard had called a meeting of some of the engines to discuss what was going to happen. "Now I know we're going through some rough times lately," said Richard, "but I can promise you that we will get through this. Sir Topham Hatt will be out of the hospital in a few days, and I have just bought 2 new engines to help out. They should be arriving at the docks later today." Thomas was worried. "Are you sure these 2 engines will be good engines and not bad ones like Randall and Mason?" "Yes," said Richard. "I can promise you that these engines will be really useful. Now come along, everyone. We've got a long day of work ahead of us." And with that, the engines set off back to work. As the last of the engines left, Oliver and Thomas pulled up side by side. "You know, Thomas, it's times like these that remind me of my last few days on the Great Western Railway. Back in those days, it was just me, Toad, and a few other engines, including my best friend, a blue tank engine named Sid. But as the days went on, the diesels soon began to arrive and take over our jobs. One by one, the engines started to disappear. Me and Toad could only watch as the horrible diesels took the steam engines to the scrapyard. Soon, it was just me, Toad, and Sid. And after the diesels got Sid, I knew I had to escape. It was then that I ended up in the scrapyard, where Douglas found me and brought me and Toad to Sir Topham Hatt's railway. "Excuse me, Oliver," said Sydney. "I hate to interrupt your story, but could you please move? I have to get to, I forget." Oliver rolled his eyes and he puffed away. Later that day, as Thomas was going on to a bridge, he saw Norman up ahead. Norman was pushing some freight cars to the edge of the hill. Just as Ryan was approaching the T-switch, Norman pushed the truck down the hill and they smashed into him. "Oh, ouch!" "Norman," said Thomas, "I saw that. What on earth did you do that for?" "Isn't it obvious?" said Norman. "He killed Dennis." "Dennis is not dead," said Thomas crossly. "He's just waiting for repairs." Richard managed to track down some parts for him, Stafford, and Reek, and they should be here any time today. So when Dennis is repaired, I expect you to apologize to Ryan for the way you're treating him. "Huh," said Norman. "Not until Ryan apologizes again to Dennis when he can fully pay attention." Thomas rolled his eyes. Since Ryan's accident had now blocked the track, Thomas was going to have to take the long way around to get to Brenham Docks. He knew he was going to be late, and this made him cross. By the time Thomas arrived at the docks, he was 10 minutes late. "You're late, Thomas," said Cranky as he began unloading the goods. "Sorry, Cranky," said Thomas. Just then, Splatter and Dodge rolled in with a goods train. "You should consider yourself lucky, Thomas," said Splatter. "You're only 10 minutes late, but Dodge and I are 15 minutes late." And it's all thanks to Norman causing an accident on the main line, said Dodge. That's exactly what happened with me, said Thomas. As in, like, that's the reason why I'm late. I am just sick of this whole Steamies versus Diesels conflict, said Thomas. I mean, how did it even start anyway? Was it because of Diesel or was it because of someone else? I just like to know. Well, we know, Thomas, said Dodge. You do? Said Thomas. Yeah, said Splatter. We know who pretty much started this whole conflict thing. It all started with this Diesel, who was a Class 08 Diesel shunter like me and Splatter. He was orange, and his name was Griffin, I believe. Now, I can't quite remember every single detail, but I believe he was the first Diesel to ever replace a steam engine. And when that happened, he wanted it to continue, so that's how the whole revolutionary and modernization thing started, I believe. But nobody knows what ended up happening to him after a while. He disappeared, and nobody knows where he's been all this time. Okay then. Well, at least I know who pretty much started this whole thing. Nearby, Harry and Bert were stirring up some trouble. The two Diesels had placed a bunch of sneezing powder by the tracks, and they were waiting for Caitlin to come by so that it would spray everywhere. Just then, Caitlin came speeding through the docks. A huge cloud of sneezing powder flew all around the dockside, covering Thomas, Splatter, and Dodge, and unfortunately for Harry and Bert, they got covered in it too. Achoo! Achoo! Whoa, 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 whoa. See why I hate the Steamies versus Diesels conflict, said Thomas crossly. Now I'm stuck. Cranky, can you move this freight car? Alright, said Cranky. I'm so bored just sitting around. Shut up, William. It's not like we haven't heard you complain about this before. Diesel 10, what are we supposed to do now? I have absolutely no idea. You got any ideas, Pinchy? The Diesels on the other railway had recently been planning to take over Sodor, but after the recent events of Ryan bombing the sheds on the other railway and killing some of their allies, they were struggling to figure out what to do next. At last, Randall spoke up. If I may, guys, I was on Sodor yesterday and I overheard Ryan saying that he was responsible for an accident that put Sir Topham Hatt in the hospital. You don't say, eh? Oh look, it's Griffin, geek. Baron, be cool. So Sir Topham Hatt is temporarily out of service. That's mega good news. Well, now that we know that the island is now vulnerable, we can take over again. But this time, I shall be the leader. Ha! You be the leader? You weren't even part of our gang last time, so you have no experience at taking over the island. What makes you think you're qualified to be leader? Well, need I remind you that I actually have a name unlike you, and my name is a name that makes people fear me? Well, need I remind you that I have a claw in here that could easily grab you if you try to take my place as leader? That rust bucket claw of yours couldn't even hurt a fly. Whoa, down Pinchy, down boy. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go to the island and take it over. Come on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Not so fast, troller. You can't take over the island without coming up with a plan. That's right, said Randall. Well, alright then. What are we gonna do first then? Well, Driller, the first thing we gotta do is... Back at the docks, Cranky had managed to clean up the mess, and Thomas was just about to go to the washdown. Just then, Splatter saw something. Hey, is that the ship that's going to bring in the 2 new engines? He asked. It is actually, said Cranky. If you guys want to stay around and meet the new engines, you can. Thomas moved into the siding as Cranky unloaded the 2 new engines. Soon, Cranky had the 2 engines unloaded onto the tracks. The first one was red, the other was white. Hello, said Thomas. Welcome to the dinosaur. My name is Thomas, and you are? My name is Adam, said the red engine. Oh, and this is Brian. He can't talk, unfortunately. Okay, well, let me show you to the shed, said Thomas, and he led the 2 new engines down the track. Meanwhile, Splinter was taking some Joby wood from Misty Island to the docks. But he didn't see Randall on the bridge with a fuel tanker. As Splinter approached the T-switch, he suddenly saw something. Splinter screeched to a stop just as Randall pushed the fuel tanker down the hill. The fuel tanker slid down the hill and derailed at the T-switch. What in the world? Cried Splinter. The fuel tanker stopped and thankfully didn't crash and explode. But Randall had failed to hit him, and he began to back away and race away down the other line. Splinter saw him, and he shoved his locked cars away and raced down the line after him. Thomas was popping onto the bridge when Splinter raced past. "Stop, I say! Stop!" he shouted. Thomas realized that Splinter was chasing Randall, so he chased after him. Randall sped down the line and around a sharp bend. But as Randall rounded the bend, he leaned on his side, and he hit some freight cars. "Ugh!" he cried. Randall barely managed to stay on the rails, but the freight cars spilled all over the track. But Splinter couldn't stop, and he crashed into the cars. And he fell off the rails. Thomas raced by unharmed. Then there was more trouble. Billy was stopping at a signal because Patriot was coming through the junction. But just then, Randall rounded the bend. "Randall!" cried Patriot. He swerved off the main line and crashed into Billy, and his trucks piled up into a heap. "Ha ha!" cried Randall. Thomas nearly caught up, but the brake van suddenly slipped off the rubble and landed back down the line. Thomas was blocked. Randall hurried down the line and went into a siding. He hit a set of buffers and then disappeared. Thomas hadn't seen Randall go for the buffers because he couldn't see past the brake van. "Bother," said Thomas. "He's sure to have gotten away by now."